the Secret Service of the White House. And a friend of mine whose name is Matt was listening to the Reaching Your Heart broadcast, and he got the whole Adventist message, you know. And he showed up in church one day. And when he showed up in church, it started a series of events, and I baptized him after a year's study. I don't believe in slipping and dipping, okay? I believe in thorough work. But I baptized him and his wife-to-be, and they're now functioning members. But radio can reach right into the halls of power. And he had Bible studies going at the White House with Secret Service agents.
Wow. That's cool.
Using the Reaching Your Heart broadcast materials. We had another prison inmate from Florida who was in between his sentencing time. And so they had XM radio. They had one of them in the prison or something like that. And so he would hold the radio to his head, and through the commode, they had a system of communication going through the prison. So they could talk to everybody in the prison through the commode system. I never heard of anything like that. He was translating my radio broadcast through the toilet system. And he says, we have all these people listening to the broadcast, and they call you that guy. Because, you know, he doesn't say Oxentenko, it's too hard, there's that guy. So he showed up, and we worked with him, and we were able to baptize him. Then he was sentenced to prison, so he went back to prison for 5 years. And his wife and their little daughter are coming to the church, and she's studying for baptism. So our XM Series broadcast has reached into the prison system of the country. What?
By choice.
By choice.
What channel on there?
It's Family Talk Radio 131, I think.
And is it online too?
It's Family Talk.
Is the broadcast online also?
It is sorta. It's not as up. Yeah, it's a little behind online. We're revamping our whole website, so it's not as good as it should be.
This clean thing came out of an unclean thing.
Well, the Bible says the Word of God shall not return to you void. It goes all kinds of places. Okay? But the fact about the matter is, I mean, doesn't it go to the lowest spot on planet Earth? Wouldn't a prison system be the lowest spot on planet Earth? So it goes wherever it needs to go. Radio has a powerful force for good. And I want you to pray for Reaching Your Heart broadcast. We have the largest reach of Adventist radio in North America, is my understanding at the present time. The voice of prophecy has ceased to be what it should be, the voice of prophecy. And I've been earnestly praying for the voice of prophecy, that God would move on the leadership of this church to raise it up right, to be what Elder H.S. Richards envisioned it as. A prophetic biblical proclamation of the truth in Jesus. And this has, somehow, we just think we're smarter than the Bible, or we're smarter than that clean, bold proclamation of the three angels. And that's what we try to do. My stuff is a little heady at times because I tend to go, I'm an expository preacher and teacher. So I try to mix it up. You know, to be deep and broad is important, not just deep. But having said that, where are we at? Let's go back to Daniel 9. We had our prayer, right?
Yep.
Listen, I'm intentionally being deep with you. You're pastors, right? You wouldn't want this stuff to end up in your layman's hands and find out that you didn't have a clue what it was, would you? And you wouldn't want to be in a position not to reason something out. Would you like us to give the chiasms to the layman instead of letting you know what's out there first? And let me just throw that picture up here again. Show you something here. Here's the picture of it, okay? Now look. We've talked about the Mare being the Mare of the mighty man, haven't we? It says so. Now how do we know the Mare is Jesus? Would God have left something like that to chance? The chiasm, the big one. From Daniel 8:1 to Daniel 12:13, the chiastic center is the word Mare. And it describes the vision of Jesus there in verses 5 to 7. So I don't have to guess at who the Mare of the mighty man is. It's the chiastic peak of the first chiasm of the three subunits. The Mare of the mighty man, the Mare. You know, I can argue about the lexicography of comare all I like, but sometimes common sense is looking at you straight in the eye. The Mare is Jesus. The central chiasm, the basis legs are Prince of Princes and one man. Again, he's central to the unity of the chiastic structure. And then Daniel 11:22, what happens here in the third chiasm? The Prince of the Covenant is broken. I'll give you this. Would you like to have this?
See?
I'll give you this chart. You know what I'm afraid, a lot of my material was ripped off a few years ago and stuck on a site called teachinghearts.org and messed up.
Oh.
Be very frank with you, it was an immense embarrassment to me. Someone came to prayer meeting, took my stuff before I could publish it, and I've had to just correct a lot of misconceptions. A lady claimed to be a prophetess and various other kinds of things. So I want to get this printed. You understand what I'm saying? I want to protect these chiasms so I can put forth the interpretation myself and let it be challenged rather than someone just getting it and then it's out of my ability to do it. That's why I'm feverishly working on this. But I will give you this. Is that fair enough? Would you make me a promise?
Yep.
You will not give it to anyone. I mean, don't give it to anyone. Because if I give you this and you give it to someone and they flesh out this stuff, I'll look like a plagiarist. See, that's a risk I run. So I really don't want that. That's what I'm being forthright with you. I'll give you this sheet here. I'll include it with, I'll leave the linguistic elements out. But that will give you the superstructure of the chiasms and you'll be able to tell what's going on. Now let me just say this. If you want to write this in, subunit number 1, the extreme chiastic bookends is the word year and year. In other words, you come to the bookends, it's year and year. On chiastic unit number 3, the extreme chiastic bookends are days and days. So you have the year for day correspondence chiastically encrypted within the chiasms. The reason why this big guy does not start right here, where the other one starts, is because Daniel concealed by the legs that drive into the other 2 units the key to Daniel 8:26, which is the Mari of the evenings and mornings. There seemed to be no chiastic link with Daniel 8:26. I used to think it stopped right here. I had a discussion with Dr. Davidson a few weeks ago, and I asked myself this question. Maybe that chiasm doesn't start in Daniel 9:2 and doesn't end in Daniel 10:1. Perhaps I'm assuming that. That's where I thought it was. Can I drive the legs deeper? And when I started looking for it, sure enough, the chiasm kept moving down deeper. It stopped at Prince of Princes and one man. And in the middle, Daniel 8:26, Mari of the evenings and mornings, matches Daniel 10:3, weeks of days. The lexicography for the Mari is provided. The 70 weeks, by implication, would be the Mari. So Daniel left nothing to chance here. Year for days, evenings and mornings days have been placed in the chiastic arrangement of this superstructure of chiasms. Now why would he do that? I'll tell you why he did it. Why God had him do it. Something as important as the doctrine of the pre-Advent judgment of 1844 is not left to chance for the group of people who will be going through the final issues of the end. We are not to guess at anything. We're to do firm exegesis to nail these things. And some things we've had to guess at because we didn't realize a hermeneutic exists within the structure of Daniel. The structure itself shows the centrality of Jesus in the book of Daniel. The Mari of the mighty man at the center of the large chiasm. The Mari of the one man. The Mari of the mighty man as the center of the first chiasm. The Prince is broken. So here you can see the Mari of the mighty man lines up with the peak of the Prince of the Covenant broken. That would indicate again, that's Jesus right here at 8:15, because it's at a chiastic peak. Now these subunits underneath it are just as thrilling, and they also provide answers. So right here at the center of Daniel 8:15, where you have the break between Mari and Chad zone, you have 2 chiasms. And the chiasm starts in Daniel 8:1 and ends in Daniel 8:15a, when it says, I was trying to understand the Chad zone. The bookends of that are Chad zone, Chad zone. So the first half of Daniel 8 is the Chad zone, chiastically. The next bookend is understand Mari, understand Mari. So the Mari is the second chiasm. The great divide is Daniel 8:15. The structure indicates not one vision, but 2 visions. Because this central chiasm breaks down into two. Right at the center is where the chiastic break is. Now, when I sent Dr. Shea this work, I had the large one worked out mostly. I had these three mostly. I have gone back through them. In fact, this Christmas I went back through them meticulously, fleshing them out even more in depth. The precision of Daniel's chiastic correspondence is within the verse. There are no gaps. Proximity matters. They're linguistic matches all the way from beginning to end with all of these. Now, if you tried to have a linguistic match for Daniel 8 to 12, and then 3 linguistic matches with subset chiasms, 7 underneath that, you know how complicated that would be? This is beyond human intelligence. But don't freak out. You know, work with us. Now listen, if God works with us, cannot we understand?
Sure.
Let's not set our sights to be, insecure in this matter. If God can enlighten Daniel, He can help us understand the book of Daniel. Well, these 7 linguistic chiasms are just as linguistic. This one meets in verse 7, this one meets in verse 23, the second one. The center of the Mare chiasm is Daniel 8:23. A king of fierce countenance will arise. And who understands riddles. He is the counterpart of the Mare. He's the one who attacks in the Mare. Rome. Okay? Now, the second linguistic chiasm is the prayer. Now, Dr. Shea helped me flesh that out. He said there ought to be a second chiasm beside the 7-week chiasm. It starts in Daniel 9:2, it ends in Daniel 9:23a. The 7-week chiasm starts in Daniel 9:23b and ends in Daniel 10:1. So right where the first one ends, the next one starts. Now this one here, the prayer chiasm, has in proximity to its extreme bookends, it has the word and word. And the word is the word of Jeremiah, the front side. The word that was given to the prophet Jeremiah. And what Daniel is praying for is another word that will come and rebuild the city based on the word that was given to the prophet Jeremiah. And so when the angel comes in Daniel 9:23, he says, from the beginning of your supplications, a word was sent forth, and I have come to explain it to you. Understand the word in the Hebrew with the Mare. So you see, he's asking 2 questions in Daniel 9. He wants to understand when the city of Jerusalem will be restored, right or wrong. Right. Isn't that right? Right? That's why he's interfacing with Jeremiah's prophecy in Jeremiah 29. And that's why he wants a word, because the word to restore and build Jerusalem is the product of his study of the word of the prophet Daniel. And that's chiastically represented. So the word it represents the prayer word is the themes of this third chiasm. So when the angel shows up, look at Daniel 9:23b. When the angel shows up in Daniel 9:23b, it says this. He says, I've now come to give you wisdom and understanding. At the beginning of your supplications, a word went forth, and I've come to tell it to you, for you are greatly beloved. Therefore consider the word and understand the Mare. Literally, consider the word and understand it with the Mare. So what's happening in this chiasm is that two concerns are being merged into the 70-week chiasm. The Mare, which was the subject matter of chiasm number 2, Daniel 8:15b to 8:27, which is the Mare chiasm, which is the Mare of the mighty man, the coming of Jesus. And the word to restore and build Jerusalem, which is the focus of his prayer pleading in Daniel chapter 9 prior to the angel's intervention to explain the Mare. When the angel shows up, he's to explain 2 things together. The Mare with the word to restore and build Jerusalem. So that's exactly what he does. Look what the 70 weeks says. 70 weeks of years are decreed concerning your people to finish the transgression, to put an end to sin, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to, come on, I'll let someone else read that if you don't mind. Yeah, go ahead. Someone else read that. Yeah, because I'm going to read that whole verse. I'm looking up something here.
70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon the holy city to finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy.
Okay. So basically, is he talking about the city of Jerusalem there? That's the subject matter of the prayer. That's what the desolations are about. So the Mare is about Jesus and the city of Jerusalem together. Excuse me. The explanation of the Mare with the word, which is the 70 weeks, is about the chiasm of the prayer in Daniel 9 and the Mare half of Daniel chapter 8. They're both combined in the exposition of the 70 weeks. Now here is chiasm subunit 1. Of those 7 that run underneath, those 7 chiasms, like the 7 days of creation. Now you can't tell me that Daniel didn't believe in the Sabbath for the time of the end. It's not just Daniel 7:25. The first chiasm says, at the first. The last 7th chiasm, last phrase is, rest, end of days. When you have 7 chiasms, what's that 7th chiasm? Sabbath imagery. See, so he's very clearly working with the themes he developed in Daniel 7. So here you have a vision appeared. I, Daniel, I saw the vision, 1:1, magnified, earth, horns, broke horns. Just back up here. All right, vision, chadzon. I, Daniel, I saw. Vision, we start at D. Vision, 1:1. Where's E? 1:1, magnified. F, magnified. Earth, earth. Horn, horns. Broke 2 horns, was broken. Great horn was broken. I should have underlined that. Ram and power. Ram had no power. You see the center is Daniel 8:7? It's the chiastic center. Of that, that's the chadzon chiasm. So chadzon is described chiastically. Now the Mare chiasm, which is about the one man, is introduced here. Okay. A, understanding vision, vision, standing, end, to stand. I'm not giving you the Hebrew, just the English correspondence. Kings, great, not with his power, boom. Now it bleeds out on the other side. Here. Not with his power, magnified, princes instead of kings, stand, end, stand, vision. And it says vision again. Mare is used twice in the chiasm on each side. And then understanding. Now, so vision and understanding are the extreme bookends of the chiasm. The chadzon was not understood. The focus was to explain the Mare. Now, what's the chiastic center of that? It's Daniel 8:23, right? At the latter end of their rule, when the transgressors have reached their measure, a king of bold countenance who understands riddles shall rise. This is Rome in 8:23. He came out of the Greek Empire. That's what opposes Christ in the Mare. So the chiasm would tend to also suggest that this is the opposition to Jesus. So now chiasm number 3. This is the one that got me looking. I didn't recognize these 7 chiasms until Dr. Shea said something ought to go right beside the 70 weeks. It's asymmetrical. And it took me about 2 weeks, and I fleshed out all of those 7 chiasms underneath because I knew the bookends. Where one starts, the other begins. So when the second chiasm, the Mare chiasm ends, we now come to Daniel's prayer chiasm. I call it the word chiasm because it has to do with understanding the word. The Mare chiasm, understand the Mare. And so as you're moving through that, I'm not going to dwell on it, but it comes to that center right there. He has confirmed his words which he spoke against us and our rulers who ruled us, by bringing upon us a great calamity. You see written in the law of Moses here? You see written in the law of Moses on the other side of this? You see turning, the Lord our God, have not obeyed the voice. We have not obeyed his voice. That's a chiasm. It's a linguistic chiasm. So the focus of the prayer chiasm is the words of God and the word to restore and build Jerusalem. So what's Daniel seeking? He doesn't understand the Mare, but he's not seeking an answer to the Mare. He wants to go home. He wants to know what the word is that will release them from captivity. And so in Daniel 9:23, pop down here, take us to the next chiasm. So the 70-week chiasm. Notice what the bookends are. The bookends are word and Mare. Where is that at? Yeah, Bamare. Word and vision. The 70 weeks is a combining of the Mare and the word, the prayer concerns, into a single explanation. Do you understand what I just said? He's explaining to Daniel how they're going to be restored, which is the word, the concern of the word given to Jeremiah, for a word to be issued, which is a command to make it happen. And it's also an explanation of the Mari, the mighty man, which is Jesus. The two merge. The chiastic bookends show this to be true. You have here word and vision as the extreme bookends of the chiasm. And on the other side, you have the word and vision, extreme bookends, down 10:1. And you can kind of see how the chiasm fleshes out. Okay, from the center, she, meaning the city, or Jerusalem return, be rebuilt, with a plaza and moat. That's feminine Hebrew. 62 weeks, 62 weeks. Messiah prince, Messiah will be cut off. Messiah. Jerusalem, city. To end. Unto the end. 7 weeks, a decree, cut off. We know that this word cut off can be a decree based on B. It's chiastically corresponding to the word for decree. And then understand the word and understand the vision. He understood the word and understood the vision. Now, this phrase in 9:23, you're looking at it? And this phrase here in 10:1 in the Hebrew says this: understand the word with the mare, which means the two are being combined. So the 70 weeks is an explanation of the mare and the word. Now it says, let's look at the beginning of 7 weeks here. 70 weeks of years, a decree concerning your people, to finish the transgression, to put an end to sin, to atone for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal both vision and prophet, and to anoint a most holy place. Now you see the word vision in verse 24? How many of you are looking at it? And guess what word that is?
I'm going to guess Mari.
Chadzon.
Yeah, because you're sealing it.
Yeah, why is 70 weeks determined? Because the Chadzon is not sealed up to the end of the Mare.
Oh, yeah.
See, the 70 weeks is the Mare. And so it takes the 70 weeks to seal up and shut up the Chadzon, which means the Mare is not sealed. You would expect the Apostolic Church to understand the 7 weeks. Did you know that they did? And the clearest representation is 1 Peter 1:10. Would you like me to show you real quick? Sure. We use some other examples, but 1 Peter 1:10, I'll tell you where I got this one from. Dr. Desmond Ford. In his commentary before he changed it all. This was actually one of the good things he left behind. Bless his heart. You know what? They say he's dying. He's got cancer. We ought to pray for him.
Amen.
You know? 1 Peter 1:10. I think he loves Jesus. I don't think there's any evidence he doesn't. And we should pray for him. All right, 1 Peter 1:10. The prophets who prophesied of this grace that was to be yours searched and inquired about this salvation. Verse 11, what does it say? They inquired what person or time was indicated. In other words, the King James will say, or the NIV will say, what manner of time? Yeah, but the relative pronoun there, most translators will agree it means who, like a person. So they want to know who the Messiah would be. They want to know when he would show up. It was indicated by the Spirit of God within them when predicting the sufferings of Christ and the subsequent glory. 12, it was revealed to them that they were serving not themselves but you. In other words, their inquiry into time and person in regards to the coming of Jesus was for our generation, Peter is saying, not for theirs. And it was revealed to them that these things would be so. Look what he says next. It was revealed to them that they were serving not themselves but you and the things which we have been announced to you by those who preach the gospel to you through the Holy Spirit sent from heaven, things in which angels long to look. Now the only place where angels and prophets are asking how long together or are focused on time is Daniel 8, 9, and 12. So here is a very clear reference to the Chadzon Mare interaction. And he says, it was revealed to them. They wouldn't know Jesus would come. Well, God told them. And go down to verse 18. You know that you were ransomed from the futile ways inherited from your fathers, not with perishable things such as silver or gold, but with the precious blood of Christ, like that of a lamb without blemish or spot. Verse 20. He was destined before the foundation of the world, but was manifest when?
In these last days.
Well, the Greek literally says this, eschaton chronon. And we get the word eschatology, means end of. It's genitive in Greek. At the end of tone, the, plural genitive article, the, chronon, chronologies, for your sake. He's talking about the 70 weeks.
So they full on knew who Christ was.
They used the 70 weeks.
They knew. I mean, like the Jewish leaders, when Jesus said, "You know who I am," they completely understood this.
Peter understood it.
I mean, I'm talking about the guys that crucified him.
Well, I don't know if they understood the 70 weeks. Remember, Jesus said, you know, you did this. He says, all these negative things will happen to you because you did not know the time of your visitation. He's referring to 70 weeks. It's Luke 19. I think so. Not Luke 19. Want to just look at it real quick? Luke is full of allusions to the book of Daniel. Luke 19. If you look at verse 41 to 44. When they drew near the city, he wept over it, saying, would that even today you knew the things that are for peace. But now they're hidden from your eyes, for the day shall come upon you when your enemies will cast a banquet about you and surround you and hem you in on every side. He's referring to Deuteronomy 28 right there, by the way. The prophecy of Deuteronomy 28 about the besieging of the city of Jerusalem in the future and them eating their children. This is the Roman invasion predicted as well. And dash you to the ground, you and your children within you, and they will not leave one stone upon another, because you did not know what? The time of your visitation. Again, I referenced the 70 weeks. So let's go back to Daniel 9 and kind of work through this real quick here. So the 70 weeks is an explanation of the word and the mare. Now look what happens next. I'd be amiss without drawing attention to the certainty of the language in verse 24. When the transgressors in Daniel 8:23 have reached their full measure, a king of fierce countenance will arise who understands riddles. The transgressions it's talking about are the transgressions of God's people. Rome came to oppress Israel because they left God and they failed to follow him. The 70 weeks, it says 70 weeks are decreed to finish the what? Rebellion. It's the same word used for transgression and rebellion you find in Daniel 8:23. So to finish the rebellion that the Jewish people had brought to its fullness, Christ came to deal with that problem. So the 70 weeks is really allocated for the city of Jerusalem and for the fate of the Jewish nation. The mare is, by definition, allocated to the fate of the Jewish nation as well. What they do with Jesus will determine what happens to them. As you're moving through here a little bit, he goes on to say, now look, let me go back. Remember it said to seal both vision and prophet? And to anoint a most holy. Does anybody's Bible say Holy One? We sometimes say this is the baptism of Jesus. It's never used for a person in the Old Testament. It's always used for a place. So we have to, now I'm not saying it can't be both. But Jesus was baptized at the end of which week?
69.
Yeah. So 70 weeks in their entirety will accomplish. Within the 70th week, we have a most holy place anointed. What would that most likely be referring to?
Heavenly sanctuary.
The inauguration of a new sanctuary in a new Jerusalem. The transition from the earthly to the heavenly. The mare, as it comes to an end, brings us into the land of the Hod zone, the attack upon the heavenly ministry of Jesus. It has to be inaugurated before that can happen. And so, really, the first part of the Hod zone, which is the mare, the 70 weeks, is not sealed. It was understood by the apostolic church, but it was the Hod zone was sealed up after that, after this transition. And that's how I understand that. And if you look at the next verse, verse 25, I'm not going to do everything here. I'm just doing high points. Now, therefore, know therefore and understand that from the going forth of a decree to restore and build Jerusalem to the coming of the Messiah, a prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks, right? Now, let me ask you this question. What is the word for decree there? Does anybody know? In the Hebrew. It's the word. Oh, you're thinking of cut off. Daniel 9:24. 70 weeks of decree up here, right? That's the word cut off. The mare, which are 70 weeks, are cut off of something. If you think the 70 weeks is the mare, then it's cut off of something. But if the 70 weeks is you know, if you think the 70 weeks is, excuse me, if you think the Mari is the 23 days, then you could think, well, maybe the 70 just cut off the Mari. But the Mari is what Daniel says it is, which is the mighty man. And it is 70 weeks, weeks of days. And that's cut off of the Chadzon, the longer time prophecy. And so the Mari of the evenings and morning, Daniel 8:26, has context now in Daniel 9:24, because it's a subset of the longer vision. You understand what I'm saying? Okay, I'm not saying accept that, but just understand that's my point of view here. Okay, so when Daniel was praying, what was issued in Daniel 9:23? The word was issued at the beginning of your supplications. Doesn't it say that? And look what it says next. It says in verse 25, "Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the decree," the word for decree there is the Hebrew word word. From the going forth of the word to restore and build Jerusalem, to the coming of an anointed one prince, there should be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. So. Okay, why does he use the word word for decree? Because Daniel is seeking a new word in that prayer chiasm. He wants the word of God to restore the city. The word of Jeremiah had brought it down, but Jeremiah said at the end of 70 years it'd come back. But the angel is very clear. I'm not just explaining the word, which connects with the 70-year prophecy of Jeremiah. I'm explaining the mare of the mighty man with it. Daniel 9:23, understand, he said, understand the word with the mare in Hebrew. And so those two are combined in what we call the mare word chiasm, the 70-week chiasm, which we have here. So what is the word? Now, when was the decree to restore and build Jerusalem? We say it in our Bible studies.
457.
Now let me ask you a question. It's a thought question. It says there the word was issued at the beginning of the supplications. Was that 457 BC?
Well, that throws everything off.
Does it?
Yeah.
It might not.
If it's from the commandment going forward till it's coming.
The word is word there.
Yeah.
The word to restore and build Jerusalem. That's what he's prayed for. He says as soon as you started praying, it was issued.
So unless he's praying in 457, that throws everything off.
So that would just mess up everything. Turn to Ezra 6:14. Turn to Ezra 6:14. I like being in a Bible study with you, Pastor. So don't you feel negative one bit about challenging me. I appreciate it. Ezra 6:14. What is the word to restore and build Jerusalem? You know, we shouldn't be guessing at these things. There's context for this. Okay, 1 second. All right, would someone read that? And why don't we read it in the King James Version? Would you do that first? I'd like to see how it reads.
And the elders of the Jews builded, and they prospered through the prophesying of Haggai, the prophet, and Zechariah, the son of Edo. And they builded and finished it according to the commandment of God of Israel, and according to the commandment of Cyrus and Darius and Artaxerxes, kings of Persia.
Now the word for commandment there is the word for decree. It means decree. Now how many decrees are coming from God? 1 or 3? Is it plural or singular there? Singular. And the decree that comes from God is also worked out in how many decrees? Well, it doesn't say that, does it? Very good. It says the decree of what? Cyrus, Darius, and Artaxerxes. The threefold decrees, as far as God is concerned, are a single decree. So the decree started when God was moving on the heart of Cyrus to let him go out of captivity. But the decree does not go forth until the final activity under Artaxerxes in the autumn of 457 BC. So until those threefold actions are in place, the decree has not gone out. See why Ezra 6:14 is so important? So we don't have to pick and choose. All 3 of these decrees together are the decree to restore and build Jerusalem. And the decree of Artaxerxes in the autumn of 457 BC completes the decree of God, which is the one that was given at the beginning of supplications. Yes.
How does that relate to verse 13?
Well, let's go back and read that. Then according to the word sent by Darius the king, Tetaniah, the governor of the prince of beyond the river, this is before, the decree of Artaxerxes is in Ezra 7. It's a parenthesis. Well, what do you mean by that question? Maybe I'm assuming I don't.
No, well, I'm just referring back to Ezra 6:13.
Yeah, but tell me what you're thinking there. As you
Well,
look at that.
it brings out King Darius in that verse.
Yes.
And then mentions him again in 14.
Correct.
So is it just that singular decree?
No, well, the singular decree is used for all three decrees in verse 14.
Not just Darius's.
Correct. The first is in Ezra chapter 1. I believe the second one here is in Ezra 6. Ezra 7 is the third decree. That one verse says they're all one decree. And you don't have a decree until they're all done. So the activity of Cyrus was part of that word to restore and build Jerusalem. But it reached its culmination with the finality of the third decree, which is, from God's perspective, the complete decree. The decree of God was mapped out in the decree, not decrees, of these three. One decree, all of their activity is the decree. So Ezra was very careful. He didn't want us missing how to do the 70 weeks. So that would lead us to the autumn of 457 BC, and we can explain that to our people now, can't we? That's not a confusing. So you need to use Ezra 6:14 and how you explain that. Now the Hebrew word here does in fact mean decree. I have actually updated this chiasm here, and this is not it. The word to restore and build Jerusalem matches another word for decree within the chiasm. Right now I just don't have it there. Okay, let's move on. Daniel chapter 9. So, we come here to the activity in the 70 weeks. We have the Messiah Prince cut off, right? He appears at the end of the 69 weeks. He's cut off after that, in the midst of the last week. I'm not going to review what's obvious in our experience. And then it goes on to say this. Verse 27. He shall make a strong covenant with many for 1 week. In the midst of the week, he shall cause sacrifice and what to cease? All right, the word is grain offering in Hebrew, minkah. Okay? Now you can't remove, if the daily is the grain offering, you can't remove it if God already did. Does that make sense? If the grain offering, if the minkah to me is part of the daily, you can't remove it if God already did at the cross. What else is removed? Sacrifice, right? That brings it down to only one of the three options, the bread. And now the bread represents more than the Bible, it represents Jesus. So it can include a lot there. So my view is that the daily is the lechem hatami, the bread of the daily. It has to do with Jesus, the person of Jesus, the Word of God that was supplanted by the Roman Church, replaced by the mass of the sacraments of the Middle Ages. And through force of arms, the recapture of the West shut down biblical Christianity in the Western Empire, creating the captivity of the Middle Ages. And we'll look at that day 11. All right, as you move down a little further, look what it says. He shall make a strong covenant with many for 1 week, right? Middle of the week, now the word make strong, I've already told you what that means. What does it mean? What's the Hebrew word there? Gavar, which means the mighty man of covenant. Now what's this mare called in Daniel 8:15b? The mare of a mighty man, gever. So he gavars because he's a gever. He mighty man's a covenant because he's a mighty man. Now, look what he does. With the many for 1 week, upon the wing of abominations will come one who makes desolate. Now, look what it says next here. I mean, what it says before. He'll confirm a mighty man of covenant with many for 1 week. Turn with me to Matthew 26. Notice the words of Jesus here. Okay. How much time do I have? 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to hurry. Matthew 26. Verse 26. Now as they were eating, Jesus took bread and blessed and broke and gave it to the disciples and said, "Take, eat, this is my body." He took up a cup when he had given that thanks, and he gave it to them, saying, "Drink of it, all of you, for this is the blood of my covenant, which is poured out for what? For the many," right? And day 927, he confirms a covenant with for many, right? Here Jesus says, this is the blood of the covenant for the many. What verse do you think he's quoting here? 70 weeks. So Jesus is saying is, the fulfillment of the mare is in place here. I'm confirming what I promised in Daniel's prophecy by quoting Daniel 9:27 at the Lord's Supper. Now, the covenant that's confirmed here is by virtue of the Lord's Supper. The new covenant meal, right? Now, what did the Catholic Church do? It took that away and turned it into the Mass, the sacraments, the Mass, the Middle Ages. Now look what Daniel says in Daniel 9:27. I want this to just glide over. He says, it would cause sacrifice and grain offering to eat. The word for sacrifice is sabach. Z-E-V or B, depending on how you transliterate it. A-C-H or K with a rough breathing mark. Savach. Savach, like that. And it means a sacrifice that you eat. It's used consistently this way. They used to eat the sacrificial meals in the Old Testament, correct?
Yeah.
After Jesus' death, if you eat anything and you call it a sacrifice, you have defied the covenant. So the Mass is a defiance of the covenant issued at the end of the 70 weeks. And grain offering cease as well. The church is to live on the living Christ and the Word of God, not through sacramentalism, but by a vital connection with Jesus through the Word of God. The prophecy of Daniel brings the old era to an end. Now turn to Daniel 10:1. In the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia, would someone like to read that? Let's try the King James again, if you would help me, brother. Thank you.
In the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a thing was revealed unto Daniel, whose name was called Belteshazzar. And the thing was true, but the time appointed was long, and he understood the thing, and had understanding of the Mara.
He never understands the Chadzon.
No.
He never does, but he gets the Mare. And remember, 70 weeks decree to seal up the Chadzon. Poor Daniel, he wanted to know. He started out wanting to know, he never gets an answer. Just an explanation for the time of the end. But he understood Jesus, and that's what God was out to do. He grew him right in the Lord. And look what it says. In the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a word was revealed to Daniel. Remember, the vision is about the word and the Mare. A word was revealed to Daniel, who was named Belteshazzar. And he was named Belteshazzar because he's no longer in Babylon. I'm free now. That's why I'm Daniel again. So he's outlived the 70 years of oppression. And the word was what? True. Now the word that was sent to him is the Daniel 9:23. It has to do with the restoration of Jerusalem. But it's linked with the word true. Now it's significant that the word was to be understood with the Mare. In Daniel 8:26, go back. If you look at this verse, it says the Mare of the evenings and morning, meaning part of it, a subset of the longer 23 days, which has been told to you is true. Do you see that? So there's a link. That verse unites Daniel 9:23 and Daniel 8:26 together to show us that the Mare and the Word are linked in his understanding. You see what I just said? You don't. I'll say it again. What's true in Daniel 10:1? The Word, right? Yep. What's revealed to Daniel in Daniel 9:23? The Word and the Mare. But what's true in Daniel 8:26? Go back.
The Word.
The Mare. So he's uniting Daniel 8:26 and Daniel 9:23 in that verse. That's why it's important to do this. He's showing you the connection of the Mare with the 70 weeks. And his understand the word to restore Jerusalem. He says, the word was revealed and I got it. It was true. Look what else he says. And it was a great battle, conflict. He understood the word in the Hebrew, and he had understanding with the Mare. So what the angel set out to do was accomplished. He now understood the time period for Jerusalem's restoration, and he understood the Mare, which was about the mighty man, and he understood them together. At this point, would he have to come back and explain any more of the Mare? No. Now, did Daniel understand the Chadzon, yes or no?
No.
Now, the Chadzon is defined as days in Daniel 8:26. The Chadzon is for many days. Now, what days is it talking about when it says days in the Chadzon?
2300?
Yeah. So the Chadzon would be about the 2300 days, the distant future, right? He didn't understand it yet, but he did understand the Mare. Now, how do we know that? Because it says he understood the Mare.
Yeah, right there in chapter 10, verse 1, it says he understood the Mare.
Correct.
Right.
But he didn't understand the Chadzon, which is days, which would be the 2300 days, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Well, go back to Daniel 8:26 and look at it.
I believe it.
Well, look at it. Look at it.
I've got it. I really do.
Now, the Mare of the evenings and mornings, which has been told you is true. Remember, I say part of it. It's a part of Hebrew construct. But seal up the Chadzon, for it is for many days, What days? It has to be the 2300 days. How do we know that? Daniel 8:13. How long is the Hadzo? And what's the answer in verse 14? 2,300 evenings and mornings, meaning days. So he does not understand the 2,300 days yet. He understands the Mare. How do we know that? Look at Daniel 10:14. The angel shows up after he understands the Mare to give him insight into the future time prophecy of the Hadzo, of the 2,300 days. And in verse 4, before we do this, we have another chiasm, chiastic unit number 5. Those days, I'm not going to do it all. It starts in 10:2, it ends in 10:21. But look at Michael. You see Michael in the center? Now, who do you think Michael would be if he's in the center of a chiasm like that? Yeah. 1:1, prince, princess, kings of Persia, king of Persia. Understand, understanding. You see it moving out from the center? Okay, so Michael's at the center of the chiasm because he's the prince that's being talked about in this whole thing. He's the mighty man. Now, moving on. Read 10:14 for me in the King James Version, if you don't mind.
Now I am come to make thee understand what shall befall thy people in the latter days, for the Hazon is for many days.
It is. Now, why would he be explaining the Chadzon if you already understood the many days, if it's the Mare? Do you have an answer to that question?
No.
Well, there isn't one, because it defies logic. If the Mare is the 2,300 days, he doesn't need to explain anything anymore. It's done. Now, you might say, well, maybe that's what it's talking about in 10:1, is what he's getting ready to talk about. But that isn't possible because of the chiasm. 10:1 is not linked to anything other than the 70-week chiasm. It's a bookend with Daniel 9:23. So it doesn't allow us that option. Chiastically, Daniel 10:1 goes back into Daniel 9. So Mare is left with the 70 weeks. Okay, moving on here. We're going to make it, because my goal tomorrow evening, how much time do I have tomorrow evening?
An hour.
I'm going to take you through an airplane view of Daniel 11, focusing on the 1290, 1335, the abomination of desolation, the daily, and the second half after verse 22. The first part of Daniel 11, I don't have any major differences with Maxwell's book, God Cares, up to the cross in verse 22. After verse 22, I'll share my understanding of it. And I'm going to take you through Daniel 11, 31, 32, 36, which is the key verse for understanding who the king of the north is in the Middle Ages, to the time of the end of Daniel 11:40. I'm going to focus on the 1290 and 1335 days. So that's going to be what we do here. We will use the chiasms a little bit. The last of the three chiasms gives us the indication as to what the 1290 would be about, the daily, as well as the 1335 as well. But that's our goal tomorrow. So my goal right now is to get to where we can set that up in the next 2 minutes, 4 minutes. Okay, we're right on target. Someone said, did I scare you?
No, just overwhelmed.
I didn't mean to overwhelm you. I overwhelmed you? I feel awful.
A lot of information. We need to process some of it.
You do. Would you rather me not have brought it?
No.
Good.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, listen.
You want the cliff notes?
But I'm showing you on the screen the chiasms, okay? But it'll come. Well, here's what's happening. Dr. Davidson indicated that these chiasms may end up, if it works out, in the Seventh-day Adventist Bible Commentary in the book of Daniel. And we just have to see how they choose to go about doing it. The problem with writing a book by committee, you don't necessarily get a unified understanding of something. You get a political outcome. And that's what happened in our SD Bible Commentary in many places in the past. It's not a great commentary. So let's see what they let the scholars do. This is coming at them. This is the year they're writing it. I connected with Dr. Davidson about 7 months ago, and I've been very patient not to push it on him, but when he finally figured out what I had, he connected back with me. He said, you must have spent hundreds of hours on this. And that's probably true, yeah. But the purpose of it is for lexicography, to remove the doubts as to the connections, to create the linguistic connection so we know what the meaning of the terms mean, And we're not guessing at things. So we can do a proper exegesis at the end of the debate. If it goes my way, fine or not. Like I've told you, I'm right or wrong based on what happens in Daniel 8:25. If that's the papacy being broken, and it's not the prince being broken, if it's the Middle Ages instead of the Pax Romana, the time of peace or tranquility, then I'm wrong. And so...
Not 100%.
I'd be 100% wrong.
Really?
Correct. That's the test of this. Because he's very clear in Daniel 8:26, the mare which has been told you is true. It's over. There's no more to the mare than verse 25. So there's nothing more. So it either goes to the Middle Ages and talks about the little horn power, if it doesn't. If it doesn't go to the Middle Ages and talk about the little horn power, then I'm right. It's a partitive use of the Hebrew construct state in Daniel 8:25. The chiasms indicate that it is. I'm going to just quickly show you. Is that Dr. John Pauline back there? Dr. Pauline! I have not seen you in years. God bless you. Let me, when did you come in? Did you come, what?
Half hour ago.
Did you see the chart on the chiasms I threw up there? The 1, the 3, and the 7? You saw that? Okay, good. What I've done, it's taken years to accomplish this, is a linguistic chiastic match from Daniel 8:1 to 12:13. Not thematic, but linguistic in the Hebrew. And the proximity is within a verse or two. Every time you have a linguistic match moving toward the center. Daniel 10:7 is the chiastic center of that whole section. Within it are 3 subset chiasms that are linguistic with their own centers. 7 underneath that pretty much arranged within the 3. And it provides the encryption for the lexicography of Daniel's terms. Like, for instance, or his meanings. Daniel 8:25 chiastically, and the overarching chiasm lines up with Daniel 11:22. So we've said in our commentaries that the one who's broken in Daniel 8:25 is the papacy. But chiastically, it's the prince of the covenant is broken. It doesn't fit. And secondly, the term mare of evenings and mornings in 8:26, we have 2 options. It can either be the mare, which is the evenings and mornings, or it can be a partitive use of the Hebrew construct state. The mare, which is part of the evenings and mornings. Chiastically, it lines up with weeks of days in Daniel 10:3. The mare, the chiastic indication would be the mare is the 70 weeks. So it would be the mare of the mighty man, a subset of the 2300 days, providing essential context for Daniel 9:24. 70 weeks are cut off. What are the 70 weeks? It's an explanation of the mare. And my position is the mare is the mighty man introduced in 8:15, which is at the chiastic peak of Daniel 8:1 to 12:13 at 10:7. The word mare is the chiastic center. So Daniel told us forthrightly the mare has to do with Jesus. So the 70 weeks would be mare. It would be about the mare or vision of the mighty man. And what I mentioned earlier was this, that Daniel is working off of Isaiah's 4th servant song. The imagery utilized in Daniel 8, 11, and 12 for the little horn power, he exalts himself, he lifts himself high, he desolates, and so on, is used in Isaiah 52:13 for the suffering servant. So the little horn is effectively Antichrist. He's usurping the language of the 4th servant song. The special language used for Jesus in Isaiah 52:53 is mare. He has no form or mare that we should desire him. It's also used in 52, is it 13 or 14? What, 13? 14. It says, his mare was so marred beyond human semblance. No, I got it mixed up the other way around. But the word mare is used in Isaiah 53 with special designation of Jesus. Now look, when you go through Isaiah 53, it says he's cut off out of the land of the living. In the 70 weeks, the Messiah is cut off, right? There are other comparisons in the 4th servant song that match the 70 weeks and the mare. Why would Daniel use another word in Daniel 8? He is not violating Occam's razor, which means all things being the same. The simplest answer is probably the right one. He's not violating. He's not going to introduce a confusing term for the same thing. He's introducing the word mare to describe Jesus. In my view, falls or rises on whether or not Daniel 8:25 describes Rome or the medieval papacy. And the problem is that the word shalva, tranquility, in Daniel 8:25, in the Hebrew, links up chiastically with Daniel 11:24, which is the Pax Romana in Daniel 11 vision. The Prince of the Covenant is broken in Daniel 11:22. It's the cross of Christ. And so the papacy was never broken in a time of peace. Am I right? Daniel 9:27 says desolations are decreed. Whoever's broken there, and the text indicates the he that is broken would most likely be the Messiah based on the chiasm. Shalva would indicate the Pax Romana. I don't see a shift from pagan to papal Roman at the end of Daniel 8. It stops at the cross, it stops with pagan Rome, and that means the Mari is about the mighty man. And it's limited to the confines of the 70 weeks. Well, listen, gentlemen, what we'll do next week, or not next week, hey, I won't be here next week. What we'll do tomorrow is I'm going to take out the overarching chiasm of Daniel 10:2 to 12:13 and show you how the 12:90, 13:35 line up with the first usage of days on the front side of it. We will look at those key components of the Middle Ages. Let me just do this one review before I get out of here. Just 2 minutes, okay? Daniel 10:1, we start where? With Darius the Mede, correct? And we have Persia. It shifts to Rome, am I correct? Remember that? Daniel 11:22, which is the chiastic peak, when the Prince of the Covenant is broken, and subunit chiasm 3. In that verse, we have the cross of Christ. Are you in agreement with me on that? When the Prince of the Covenant is broken, it means Jesus.
Sure. Yeah.
It's the same phraseology in Daniel 9, Nagid. It's a Davidic kind of prince who's broken. So that's the cross during the time of Rome. Remember the king of fierce countenance? It says he will turn his face to the coastlands. He's introduced as Rome coming up to Daniel 11:22. We have the word shalva, tranquility, in Daniel 11:21, describing Tiberius Caesar. We have it again in verse 24, describing the time period for the alliance under Judas Maccabeus, which we'll look at later, in which Israel became a vassal of the Roman Empire, so to speak, by degree. All right, so if we have the cross there, in verse 40 of Daniel 11, does it not say the time of the end, yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay, so where is the abomination of desolation in this mix? Verse 31, right?
Yeah.
The dailies are moved where in Daniel 11? Verse 31, right? It has to be between the cross before the time of the end. Does that make sense? Now, so when it talks about the 1290 and 1335 days, from the time the daily is taken away to set up the abomination of desolation, there'll be 1290 days. Blessed is the one who comes in 1335 days. The days there have to do initially with the activity of the abomination of desolation and removal of the daily, correct? Just using common sense. It's between verse 22 and verse 40. All of those terms, which will later be described as time prophecies in Daniel 12, right? They have to start in the Middle Ages. You hear me? You cannot have a futurist application of those time prophecies without violating contextualization there. They're sandwiched enough in the middle that it's somewhere in the Middle Ages where they start with the dailies removed. And so then we have to figure out what it is. And we'll spend a little time on that. So I'm not going to work on the stuff that we all know, like Daniel 11:1 to 11:22. Maxwell's book, I think, is right on there. I want to move from 22 on, allow the chiasms to work for us, and really try to give you comments. I believe that the Millerites got it right in the chronology, but they did not understand what the daily was. And the reason they got it right was they reasoned back from 1798, which was a key for them. But we have better tools at our hand right now. And these time prophecies will tell us when the medieval captivity comes to an end. That's why they're laid out. That's all we can do. Let's have a word of prayer. Dr. Pauline, would you have our closing prayer for us? I feel greatly honored. Thank you.
We're grateful, Lord, for your word. And it's good to be reminded that even with your word, we know less about you than we think. It's good to be reminded that we have much yet to learn.
Yes.
It's it's good to be reminded that you are with us as we study. So we thank you tonight. Pray your presence and blessing with us throughout. For Jesus' sake.
Amen. God bless you.